Did you know that 85% of your engine wear occurs at startup? Yes, that is correct, and this is where Lower the Friction comes in by putting a protective, lubricating barrier on all moving parts. This now gives you full-time protection to make your engine last longer, run smoother, give you better performance, and improved fuel economy. People across the country are reporting some very exciting results. Go to lowerthefriction.com, place your order, and enter in promo code SOS to get 5% off of your order. That's lowerthefriction.com. Greetings, everyone! Welcome to the weekly Secrets of Saturn livestream. I am Jason Lindgren, your host. Joining me this week are Crow777, The Great Baldini, Wayne McCroy, and Karen B is going to be here, at least for a little while, as long as she would like to be, of course. We're going to start off by talking about the Flattoberfest. What would we call it, Karen? A festival, a conference, a meeting, a hangout and drink too much coffee? What would we call it?
I like to call it a festival. I think the other day I decided that that's the word I like to use to describe it, because it's not really a conference. You know, it's a little bit more relaxed than that, and a little bit more open and more about meeting people and face-to-face conversation.
I like it. Let's get the logo up here. So that's the official Flattoberfest logo. So how's it looking? How many seats we got left? I don't know every detail of everything, so I'm just going to let you take that away. The big thing is I'm going to be there. That's why I wanted to talk about it a bunch. And I'm going to be doing a presentation on the social engineering of manned spaceflight. And I'm doing this a lot more audio-visual than I did at the one I did in Dallas last year. So it's going to be a lot more musical and more stuff going on. I'm trying to outdo myself. But anyway, go ahead, Karen.
Yes, so it's Flattoberfest, and it is happening October 24th, 2020 in Greenville, South Carolina. And it is at a Shrine Event Center. It is a pretty large room. It's a big ballroom. It has a stage. It has a kitchen. It has a bar. It has all the facilities that we need there. They usually have the capacity for 1,500.
Ooh.
So at the time that I booked this, they were telling me between 300 and 400 would be their capacity for this event. No masks required at all whatsoever. So we've got about almost half of that filled so far. So last year I had 200 people at Flattoberfest, and we're at about that right now. Just the guests, not including people who are speakers or vendors, or not vendors, but exhibitors. So that is just attendees.
Awesome. Sounds like
Yeah,
that's going to be a pretty packed house then, no matter what then.
yeah, for sure.
Who all's going to be there? You want to give us the list?
Yes. Well, Bob Nodell from Globebusters is going to be there
I've heard of
and
him.
giving. Yeah, yeah. Pretty well known guy. Also, Mark Sargent is going to be there. And Mike Williams of Sage of Koi Radio is going to be there giving a presentation, as well as James True and Jason Lindgren. And those are the presenters.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah. So it's not very many. So we have the place for the whole day, right? We have it from noon to midnight. So we're going to try to use as much of that time as possible and maximize it, since everybody's going to be there from out of town. So we're going to have speakers, and then we're going to have a break after that where people can talk, amongst each other, or maybe you can ask the speaker questions, and everybody can kind of hang out and converse about what it is they just heard or their ideas on it, or maybe something else. Who knows? Whatever you want to talk about. So we're going to space it out like that. And then we'll have a dinner break, and we're going to have also music. One band is going to be there. One Big Love will be there. I'll probably have them play earlier in the day to start it off when everybody first starts filing in. And so that's what we'll be doing. And then who knows what'll happen, because we've got a great sound system that's going to be lined up there, because Commercial Sound and Video, who is in charge of all that, and that's what he does. That's what he does for a living, so it's going to be top notch. So it'll be fun.
Well, I hope everybody can make it. Why don't you give the location and the cost and all that good stuff too?
Okay, you got to go to the website, flattoberfest.com. Right there on the first page, it has a link to buy the tickets. Tickets are $77 each for an adult ticket. There is an option there. If you want to bring your children, it's free, or just donation based. It just says child donation ticket. And so however many children you're bringing with you, as long as you pay for an adult ticket, you can bring your children, and it will cost you nothing else to attend. Okay, so that's there. Don't let that be something that holds you back. If you can just bring them with you, go ahead and do it, because it'll be fun. There's going to be a lot of other people there. I know already a lot of people are bringing their children. It's family friendly. So that, and then also we're going to have an exhibit that's going to be there all day. It'll be set up the whole day, so everybody can sort of make their way to it as they get time. That's going to be called How the World Works, and it's going to be hosted by Cammie Nodell, which is Bob Nodell's wife, and a very good friend of mine, and also Zach Zabala. And they will have all kinds of stuff, ferrocells, Van de Graaff machines, just maybe some gyroscopes, some magnets, some different things to exhibit how electromagnetism works, and basically to back up, electric universe theory, and how a lot of people in this think the way the realm works, So that'll be really interesting for people to go and check out.
Cool. Well, thank you, Karen. I think it's going to be a great time. I think what we're leaning more towards, as we were talking about when Rose and I came to visit you, more of a get-together thing, more personable, less corporate-y, detached kind of thing, not so official uptightness, more like, hey, let's get together as a bunch of friends. We'll talk about some really cool concepts and then discuss them afterwards, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It'll be set up kind of like almost like a dinner theater type of deal, where there'll be a bunch of tables set up, and they're big round tables, and there'll be chairs around all the tables. So it's almost like, very sociable, like a social event, exactly like what it is. It'll be great.
Cool. All right. Well, I hope as many people who can come will come, because I want to see this thing be a big success, so we can keep having events like this, especially this year when so much crap has gone down. I mean, I didn't really social distance and stay home and all that nonsense, but I know a lot of people did, and other places were worse than where we live. So great opportunity to get out and not have to deal with a bunch of mask crap and people saying, "Oh, you got to social distance, stand over there 6 feet apart." No, screw that. This is people acting like people. We're acting like real living men and women, and that is that.
Exactly. And there's going to be so many other people there besides just the people named on the website, the speakers. There's going to be tons of people there that you know from YouTube that are content creators, people that have been in this for a very long time, people that are very well researched. So there's going to be a whole plethora of people to speak to who are on the same level as you. It's going to be the energy there is going to be off the freaking charts.
Well, it is, because how often do you get to be around 200 plus people who are at least somewhat on the same level as you, and the same wavelength, whatever you want to call it, interested in the same things you are, want to talk about the same things you're interested in, that learn more about the things you're interested in. How often does that get to happen, especially in 2020? So, yeah, I think this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, and I've got some surprises in store. I'm not going to say what they are, but I do have some stuff that I'm going to be working on the next couple of weeks to for Flattoberfest that I'm not going to announce. You're just going to have to be there to find out what happens.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Is that going to do it, Karen? We got everything out we needed to say? Do the website one more time and the location and all that. Let's make sure everybody gets it through.
Yes, flattoberfest.com, October 24th, 2020, Greenville, South Carolina. The website has where you get tickets, where the venue is, where hotels are. If you don't want to go to a hotel or a hotel's too expensive, it has links to campsites. There's many, many campsites all around there because this is the Carolinas and there's lots of woods around here. Also, there is Just Jack, who lives near the venue, who has property, who's letting people pitch tents on his land. So if you're willing to pitch a tent on Just Jack's land and you want to do that, you can email Jack at justjackflatearth@gmail.com.
That's
so
awesome.
There's plenty of yeah.
All right. Thanks, Karen. Let me get the camera on now. And you're welcome to stick around as long as you want if you want to be part of this conversation.
Yes, I would love to for a little while. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So tonight we are going to talk about, let me get my document ready here. Operational procedure for Project Pandora microwave test facility. Prepared by E.V. Byron, October 1966. So needless to say, the things we're going to talk about here in this document, they've known about for a very long time. The Beatles were still together when this document was written. That's how long ago we're talking. To start, this report describes the operational procedure for the Project Pandora microwave test facility. It is intended primarily for non-microwave-oriented technical personnel to enable them to operate the facility with a minimum of training. Included is the turn-on, turn-off procedure, the procedure for measuring transmitted power and power density, and a description of the power monitors. Now, Wayne, Baldini, whomever has had a chance to go through this, if there's somewhere in particular you want me to go while we start breaking this down.
You do want to skip the stuff for operational thing. I think you could start, let's see, the test results. Let's find that page. All right. We can start on page, what's officially, I think, the bottom of page 3. It's the test results on microwaving bunnies.
Oh, my God.
Where they began, they restrained bunnies in wooden boxes. And
all right, I'm out. I'm going to bed now, guys. You're going to microwave bunnies?
They did.
It's not very nice.
It's for science.
Yeah, it's for science. But they just, this is noting change in heart rate. So this is the first set of results, I think, on page 4 is where you'll find that.
Okay.
If you want me to summarize it real quick, I can do that. It's pretty, I mean, there's a lot of data in there, but it's the...
Yeah, you know what? Go ahead and do the summary because I'm kind of jumping through this, and I see just a whole bunch of table of contents right now. So go ahead and summarize that, and then we will.
Yeah, basically. So what they did in page 3, what they did was they took a number of rabbits, put them in boxes, and they radiated some and not others. This is about 2.5 gigahertz, not a whole lot of between 2 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz.
You mean what Wi-Fi routers are?
Exactly. Yeah, and basically, what they did a variety of bunnies. I think there was 20 of them, 10 of them with and 10 of them without. Essentially, what happens is they noted a direct correlation and an increase in heart rate between on those 8 rabbits. So I'm sorry, 16 irradiation, 16 control trials. With 8 rabbits each, the relative change in heart rate was generally positive, so the increase was larger and more variable as they increased the time. So essentially, when they irradiated the rabbits, it increased their heart rate. That was the very first thing that they noted was an increase in heart rate up to about 50%. So it was a noticeable increase in their heart rate. Later in some of the reports, basically during the discussion, they talk about that they began the hypothesis that there was a number of other physiological effects that were related to that, including hormones and cortisol, that sort of stuff released. But initially, they did have the heart rate increase, followed by hyperventilation and some thermal stress, hyperthermia afterwards. So it did, again, constitute a variety of physiological effects at the very first level of testing. And then there's a bunch of summary data sheets going down to end of page 12, I think. So let me find your next grouping here, something that you can just kind of read and get a good summary of. Do you know where the next group is, Wayne, just off the top of your head?
No, I really don't, because the way they have this document broken up is a little bit confusing, because there were so many different sub-projects of Project Pandora.
Right.
That the way they have it spelled out in the document here, it goes through, first of all, at the beginning of each phase, it goes through the equipment settings and how to set up the equipment and stuff like that, and what the actual equipment looks like and all the details of that. But let me see here.
Yeah, I'm looking through. They basically have just a bunch of graphs showing the data of the test levels that they did. Many of these things were done in anechoic chambers. These are, by the way, were at the time labeled secret, so they did not want anybody getting their hands on these documents.
And portions of them were actually labeled as top secret as well. So, I mean, a lot of this was high clearance stuff. I believe these became unclassified officially within, I think it was in the 1990s, if I remember correctly, is when they declassified a lot of this information.
But
go ahead.
I would point out that the basic stuff that you see here are simple, what we would consider now simple dipole antenna arrays. Again, very similar, as Wayne pointed out earlier, to Wi-Fi routers in your home. And they had done these tests, again, and I've got a number of documents that we'll introduce later, going all the way to between 2001, 2007, specifically in the bandwidth that we're talking about in terms of the 5G. As well as even 4G. And so it's not as if this information was not known or they didn't have any idea of the effects of microwave radiation on organic material. They have done these tests. Again, this is from 1966. And so, it's as old as I am. And they well knew what the effects of the radiation would be. And yet, again, they chose to deploy this technology not only broadly, right? Putting it in your home, knowing full well that it had a variety of psychological, physiological, and emotional effects, and that's not a mistake.
Indeed. No, these things don't happen by accident. But just so people understand, very, very early on, many decades ago, they studied and understood the effects that this stuff has. So, this kind of thing is not anything new. Like they knew this stuff was harmful, yet they went ahead and they implemented this technology for communications purposes anyway, knowing full well that it caused harm to people. So, when you look at it from that vantage point, this is going back to the 1960s, and actually some of these studies I think were done as early as the late 1940s and even through the 1950s when they started doing a lot of this stuff. But this Project Pandora, the different sub-projects of it were results of a concern that they had about a signal coming out of Moscow, and that's what had caused them to go ahead and start doing some of this research, according to this report here anyway. If we go down to, there's a Freedom of Information Act request from a Mr. Michael Drosnin listed in here, where they show the release, and it's a memorandum that was limited distribution, top secret, classified down here. 13th May 1965, memorandum for Dr. Brown, Dr. Fubini. Subject: ARPA and Moscow embassy radiation. So this is one of the things that they were concerned with. So we'll read this little portion here in the snippet of Project Pandora. Subject: ARPA, that's ARPA, and that's the Advanced Research Projects Agency, and Moscow embassy radiation. In the Advanced Sensor Program, ARPA is entertaining proposals to investigate possible clinical effects, primarily neurological, of continuous microwave radiation with either CW or pulsed waveforms. The CIA and a special USIB subcommittee have become interested in this problem for the following reason. The radiation intensity on our Moscow embassy exceeds by a factor of about 100 the safety level specified in Soviet microwave specification standards. These Soviet standards are considerably more stringent than ours. Specifically, the Soviet standards are to not exceed 10 microwatts continuously, and in no case to exceed 1 milliwatt for even very short periods of time. I understand that the average radiation intensity inside the windows of our Moscow embassy is on the order of 1 milliwatt. Consequently, a considerable amount of interest has been generated by the CIA and by the USIB in reviewing existing data in this field, which is very scanty at these radiation levels, even though the possibility that the radiation is intended to produce neurological effects on embassy personnel is probably relatively low. On the other hand, since we have no real idea of what the radiation is intended for, it has been the feeling in the USIB and the CIA that this possibility should not go unexplored. Unfortunately, there is some past unsavory history of experiments of this kind in this country which has made a number of people rather leery of further experiments in this field, and which has resulted in the setting of standards of safety which are approximately 1,000 times looser in this country than in the Soviet Union, with our standards being set primarily by thermal damage thresholds. Effort has been going on by the Director of Clinical Research, Neurology in NIH on lower-level radiation to see if neurological effects can be detected. But even in this case, the effort has not been apparently officially sanctioned as an NIH project because of the circumstances noted earlier. ARPA now has some proposals to conduct meaningful experiments in this range, in which the intent would ultimately be to experiment not only with the average intensity of the Moscow radiation, but also with a close simulation of the waveforms used. However, there seems to be some internal resistance in ARPA to the suggestion that ARPA proceed with these experiments, probably because there is a feeling that at one time it certainly attracted a number of crackpots. The proposal, which makes considerable sense now, is a proposal to the U.S. Air Force primates as subjects in a carefully controlled series of experiments, with the intent being to detect neurological or synergistic effects. My feeling is that we should carry through with these experiments if these experiments can be accomplished at a reasonable cost, because of the following considerations. And then it gives a list.
And I have the results of those tests standing by.
Hey guys,
yes, I was hoping you would, because this is interesting stuff. This is what really kind of kickstarted this whole thing. They noticed this signal in Moscow that was affecting the embassy there. And this was later actually corroborated as what they called the woodpecker signal. They were able to detect it all the way over here in the U.S. And it was, these signals were going out, and they weren't sure exactly what the deal was with this. So they started studying what could possibly be the reason for this. Right. And they thought, this might be to try to produce neurological symptoms in people.
And
so
it did
they better
indeed.
explore that. Yes.
Yeah,
Go
it
ahead
did-
with those results, Paul Dini.
Sure.
This
So
is
starting,
interesting.
within starting the summary begins. I think the memorandum begins on page 114 of your document. But in page 115, it describes basically the nature of the test, in which they took a rhesus monkey, and they had trained him to do some. Yeah, I know, right? Rhesus macaque. So the RH factor. So what they had trained him to do some basic functions for food rewards, and he had to close a switch, and he would get food reward. And what they did was they tried to duplicate as best they could the nature of the signal in Moscow. Now, they were unable to confirm whether it had anything if it were acting as a carrier wave. Beyond just the signal itself, they were unable to determine that. But they did just duplicate that, and they were looking for physiological and neurocirculatory effects of this microwave radiation at levels below the U.S. accepted standard of the 10 milliwatts. They said there's no other underlying data beyond that. So basically what they did was page 116, I believe. So they break down the functions of what he was supposed to do. He had 5 steps to receive food reward. On page 117, as they go through the functions, basically what happened, here's the breakdown summary. Over a 26-day period, he began slower and slower behavior until finally he just said fuck it, basically, and stopped doing anything at all, and went into, they said, a deep sleep, but apparently a coma. It just stopped. He just didn't want to do anything. Even for food, he was not interested. And so at the bottom of page 117, they're saying, well, we're just going to have to get a new monkey.
So
the
wait
rhesus
a
macaque
second.
became so severely depressed that he stopped eating.
Essentially, yes. He just didn't want to do anything, and just he stopped. His response times kept getting higher and higher and higher between doing the functions, and finally he just said, "No, I'm done. Not even for food." He didn't want to do anything, and so they were just going to have to. They stopped it for 12 days, and he did not really recover. He just went into a deep sleep and was done. And again, this does not account for anything that might have been contained within as a carrier wave. In other words, if they were embedding any sort of signal in that beyond just the nature of the microwave. So a tuned microwave signal basically responded in what we would consider clinical depression.
So what level of strength of these 2.4 gigahertz, 2.0 to 3.0, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's mostly around 2.4, I think, just under 2.5 gigahertz. Very low, frankly. We're talking on the order, again, of less than 100 milliwatts per square centimeter. So essentially, your Wi-Fi router at home would be about half that, depending on, or if you have a booster, it could be even more than that. So somewhere between 50 to 100, your Wi-Fi router at home is probably somewhere between 50% to 120% of what they were doing that test on. And those are in 10-hour sessions. And if your Wi-Fi router is on all the time, it could lead you, again, if it's a 2.5 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz router, lead you directly into depression.
So wait a second. Let's talk about what exactly this really means then. Let's relate this to what is going on today, because everywhere has Wi-Fi and all that sort of thing going on today, not to mention the cell phone signals being broadcast everywhere. What does this really mean? Let's apply it to, because this is why we're breaking this down, because we want to talk about the realistic, real-world consequences of what we experience every day. First of all, Crow, you did a lot of stuff with this sort of broadcasting. Did you know about any effects while you were in the military of this sort of thing?
Well, for one thing, every antenna farm, when you're in a comm unit, is usually at least a mile away from you up on a hill. Part of that's so you don't get triangulated and blown up, but a big part of it's because you don't want to be near that stuff. I'd say about 50% of the comm tools we used, anything with a dish, you don't want to be anywhere near it. Even when you're keying down mic on stuff like UHF, there's like 300 amps in those antennas. You don't want to be in it.
Yeah.
But there's another tell here. When I first did the Gerson method and I was reading all her research, she made the claim in the book that Russia had outlawed microwaves in the 70s, microwave ovens in the 70s. So the timeline you've laid down is 66. So you can see how much time. I don't think microwaves got very common until the end of the 70s. In the 80s, they were pretty affordable. but that's how much time it took them to turn it into a consumer product. But apparently, and I do have some people who have responded who claim to have lived in Russia that said it's true, that there really are no microwave ovens for the most part in the cities. So this goes to show you what's gone on here. And you and I just did a show with Lena Poo, who is correlating this with, what do you guys call the damn wireless ear things you wear? AirPods, is that it?
Yep, AirPods.
Oh, right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, so the AirPods, and she's correlating that, and the whole time she was explaining, it's bad enough if you put one, you put the other, but think about cooking a hot dog in a microwave, right? If you go a little too long, you know how it gets that warped? You can tell it's unevenly been messed with. It's like blistering on one side and splitting open. You can see it's exactly what she's describing when you're using the earbuds, but the point I would make here is our government went and made merchandise out of this technology and put a microwave oven in every home. If it is correct, and I've had a couple people confirm it, Russia outlawed microwave ovens for mass consumerism as early as the 70s. So that should tell you just about everything you need to know.
And they were pushing it real hard. I remember, again, 1972 or so, there was a television show called How Come, that, it was kind of like How Do Things Work, but it was, the 70s version of it. And they were explaining microwave ovens and strongly suggesting that everybody should get one. They were pushing it real hard as soon as possible. And at the bottom of page 118, here's the quick summary of how they described this. The most important results obtained to date after the 28 days, not continuous, of radiation at a primate. And again, they reduced it. This is only 5 milliwatts per square centimeter. With a simulated Moscow signal, have been 2 repetitive, complete slowdowns and stoppage of the monkey in carrying out his test work functions. The monkey normally works 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. At stoppage, the data strongly suggests that the monkey went into a deep sleep. The second breakdown occurred sooner than the first, suggesting that the pre-stressing due to the radiation environment had occurred. There is no question that the penetration of the central nervous system has been achieved, either directly or indirectly, into that portion of the brain concerned with the changes in the work functions and the effects observed.
Well, there's a tell here. Why in the hell did they go from rabbits to primates, first of all? And why the hell did they choose a rhesus macaque? This is very telling. These are dark minds doing dark things. And it's pretty clear that one side of the world knew this was damaging from the get-go and didn't want to implement it beyond very low levels. And as I was scanning through your guys' document here, there's even a claim that the Russians were bombing the American embassy with microwaves.
That's where it started. That's why they did the research, because they were concerned about it. Yeah.
Right. So they're talking about this, but everybody knew. And in a lot of ways, the stories we get about other parts of the world are never about human beings. It's like, oh, they're Russians, they're something else. But you want to know something? Those people have been ahead of us in so many ways. And when you understand what a microwave does to a water molecule, I think, how did Lena Poo describe it, Jason, as bending it or warping the molecule itself?
Yep, that's how she described it.
And so, so what you're
doing,
and
our bodies are 80+% water, which is what she was getting at. So all these things, all these devices that you're putting on you and all the things you're surrounded with and getting hit with all the time, plus the stuff they're trying to crank out more, she's just pointing out the fact that this is bad. This is like so bad, it's ridiculous.
Real bad. And also a note, one of the sidelines here is that the core body temperature dropped 1.2 to 1.5 degrees from normal, with a delay of 30 to 60 minutes after the microwave radiation was introduced. So again, drop the core body temperature as well, so it has an effect immediately on your metabolism within 30 minutes.
Body shutdown, right? That's the only way that's the only way you can lose body temperature. And by the way, most people don't understand that to have low temperature is sometimes much worse than having a high temperature.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the practical applications of this. Let's think about the world around us. Like how does this pertain to the world around us today? Well, people might be shocked to know that 1 in every 5 people has some sort of a neurological condition or a psychological condition. And that's the actual data from places like the CDC and the World Health Organization. They readily acknowledge that 1 in 5 people has some kind of a serious mental health disorder or neurological disorder. And people just don't seem to question, why is that?
They're not putting it
Walking
together.
around, right, when we're walking around in this microwave soup, what's
Soup.
different now than was, say 50, 60, 70 years ago? And
In fact,
this
you
is
can
one of
draw
the big things.
You can draw a direct correlating factor to every introduction of electromagnetic radiation from the beginning of wireless, and then radio, and then television, and then cell phones, pagers, Wi-Fi. At every one of those, there has been, you can just correspond to spikes in all sorts of things. And
Pandemic.
yeah, exactly.
Well, think about it. What it means about putting the pandemic into a proper frame of mind, because this is going to have an effect. But the idea here is that when all people get sick or whatever we see, it gets blamed on an illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this really kind of underscores how important it is to communicate effectively that the illness at hand is not what you've been told it is. Because when people start getting sick, you know that this is a triple, quadruple, super duper 100 times reverse that they've set up so that when people get sick, they'll say, oh, they've got this, that, or the other thing. And it's not the case at all. It's the systems that they're installing as quick as they can while the world's shut down.
Well, and let's just draw a direct line. I was going to do it later, but since you went there, Crow, let's just draw a direct line here. This abstract from 2007 indicated that, again, microwave radiation, and this is again, this is a 2.5 watt load. But in that 6G category, that on any organic material caused a change in the organic compound itself, and specifically the chemical oxygen demand, COD, increased its rate by nearly half. So in other words, ionizing radiation caused you not to be able to get oxygen. And so I can't breathe. You heard of that?
Yeah.
So they've been doing that since 2001. The original abstract starts at 2001, and they were going through a variety of different wave wave interference patterns, and they basically nailed it down. They ultimately got to where they can by 100% increase your chemical oxygen demand level. So really shut you. It's basically like high altitude sickness. They can just induce it almost immediately. And I suspect, and I have since the outset, when I began to see them. It immediately began installing 5G once the lockdown began. That it was there was, and we also saw the overlays of maps from 5G deployment as well as the beer bug. There seemed to be a direct correlation. It was hard to prove, but I mean this stuff really clearly demonstrates that it does have an immediate effect on your respiratory system, such that the chemical oxygen demand immediately jumps up by a minimum of 50% and up to 100% if they do it right, if they kind of point it at you, and especially in that particular bandwidth, the millimeter wave bandwidth. So it does seem to be direct correlation.
Well, according to Lena Poo, she's referring to all these microwave spectrums. And by the way, she breaks it out in an episode we've got coming out that it's not just the whole number frequencies, but there are thousands of sub-frequencies jammed in that are being auctioned off.
Yes.
By whatever government agency I've forgotten is in charge, but she refers to them as alien waves because they don't occur in nature. But then at one point in the show, she did mention that sometimes, I guess, microwaves, a couple squeeze in from the sun, which I didn't think was the case. Maybe you know, Baldini. I was under the impression that microwaves do not occur in nature. Do you know anything about that?
It's on the electromagnetic spectra, but just not nearly at the amplitudes that we're using artificially. It is part of the sun is basically black body radiation, so it's all the way across the spectrum, all the way across the measurable spectrum. So it does occur, but not nearly at the frequencies that we're using, and certainly not carrying digital data is what we're doing with that. So what we're doing is decidedly unnatural.
Karen, you're welcome to jump in here anytime.
Those frequencies naturally occur, right? It's on the electromagnetic spectrum. But what we're doing with it and the waveforms that we're putting out are decidedly unnatural. Absolutely. And if we consider the universe as, again, being electromagnetic, and that if we look at cymatics and the waveforms that are generated there, what they're doing to it is substantially altering the very material construct of our world.
Right. Where's Karen B? You with us, Karen?
Right here.
It's really hard to get a word in edgewise with all of us, but you're certainly welcome to chime in.
I know.
Bad
I've
enough
never
with me and Baldini.
I've never been.
Yeah,
a-
Jason and I actually belong to a support group called On and On and On because he can't get it working. So,
Mea culpa.
You can't treat me that way. I brought the extra cocaine.
Liar.
The mythical. Yes.
that's the unicorn of the party right there.
I will say though, I haven't read this document before, and I did read something else that talked about them using rabbits and testing microwaves on them, and I remember it being they did it in a few specific ways. They talked about how they did it. They even did it in an environment where the rabbit was comfortable and happy, and then they did it in an environment where the rabbit was being stressed out by something. And they talk about how it was easier for the rabbit who was in a comfortable environment to physically recover from the effects of the radiation it got exposed to than it was for the rabbit who was stressed out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's intuitive, right?
Yeah.
You would think that would be the case.
Yeah, and it was just, that, and I read that while everybody was on quote unquote lockdown.
Uh-huh.
So it was kind of creepy. Like, well, just send everybody home, have everybody sit in their houses and wait for what? Like, what's going on outside? Oh,
interesting. Beginning on page 195 into 198, looking at this project Pandora document, they were looking at a broad spectrum of human functions. So they had these guys in the Fifth Fleet on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier based on some of the radiation that they were subjected to. And they were here's all the areas that they saw categorized changes. So psychomotor, the choice reaction time, the rotary pursuit, sensory perceptual, visual acuity failed or went down, vertical and lateral imbalance increased, stereo depth was affected, color weakness was affected, flicker fusion was affected, cognitive word fluency began to go down, number facility began to drop off dramatically, memory, especially auditory, began to show an effect, speed of closure in terms of categorizing words went down, and their perceptual speed, both number and verbal, all went down fairly dramatically, corollary to the introduction of electromagnetic exposure. So there you go. There's the human stuff, and they just used poor bastards in the military who, they signed their life away, and so they didn't even tell them.
And notice how this is all done in an anechoic, which I guess means no echo chamber.
Yeah, that's correct, anechoic.
So our world is not that. These things are going to bounce around in our world, right?
Well, that was for the monkey and the rabbits. The one I'm reading here on around page 200, right around there. They were on board at sea, so they were on the flight deck of a aircraft carrier. So that's what the ones I was just reading from, with those various results that they saw from electromagnetic radiation on the flight deck. So they were testing them, and apparently, according to, they've got the questionnaire here as well, page 210 or so. They were going through this. So apparently, they didn't really tell them what they were testing for or about. They just ran them through a series of tests.
Stand there.
Take this LSD and stand over there.
Yeah, don't be careful of the window. Mind the window. Defenestration is a bad thing. But here's the chart results, page 216 through 218. Oh, I see. They it's not just what they were subjected to. You can see on page 219 they had a specially created dipole antenna that they were barraging them with. How nice.
Now, is that the same
they
kind of
weaponized
antenna
it.
that we would have nowadays on
so
Wi-Fi routers?
Yeah, so 2.6 to 4.0 gigahertz on that one. Yeah, 2.6 to 4.0 is what they hit them with specifically.
It looks like everything in here is with dipole. You should tell people what a dipole antenna is.
Yeah, it's so basically they're using two poles in an array, and they're using interactive or do combination of constructive and destructive wave interference to basically be able to steer the direction, the dispersion pattern. So you can control the dispersion pattern of the waveform, so it doesn't just go out in 360, right? Normally in a free field, emanating waves will go out freely in all directions. And so if you take two different pole antennas and time them just right so you get the phase lock between them, you can basically steer or direct and increase the waveform intensity along a specific line as well.
Is that what's called beamforming?
Yes. That's a form. That uses.
That you just described beamforming, right? Because
yeah,
I remember that being a big deal when everybody was talking about 5G. It's beamforming. So if you have your phone on you, which is basically broadcasting your location, then if you walk somewhere where they've got these towers up, they can pinpoint you out of a crowd and send a
target you. Yes.
Yeah, target. Yeah, that's correct.
To you.
Yeah,
you got to be careful. Someone could start a fire with that kind of technology.
Yeah, but
Really?
With multipolar arrays, as they have on 5G towers now, they can really pinpoint direct it. And not only that, but what I read initially when I was looking at the different frequencies that they were using in terms of the 5G, and it's such a broad bandwidth, it is, again, from my perspective, it's intended to be weaponized. The fact that it can carry data is like 4 or 5 levels down in what it can do, and specifically not only use it to microwave you if you wanted to, cause all sorts of phenomena as we just described, but it can also be used basically like three-dimensional sonar, if you will. In other words, you could map out a room in real time, including thermal arrays. You could very clearly see people moving around and map the room basically like a 3D sonar. It's very easy to do.
Well, look at the name of the damn project, Pandora. Does anyone out there remember the myth? I mean, what comes out of the damn box?
Don't open the box.
Yeah, everything,
box,
everything bad's bad hit. Open the box. What's in the box?
Yeah,
it's everything bad. Everything bad in the world, and the last thing left in the box, which I don't quite equate to this, is hope. So they knew damn well what they were doing, or they wouldn't have named it Pandora.
They did, and in fact, the part where they were doing the test on the flight crew was the Project Bizarre.
Yep.
Well, that's
the sub-project.
Pandora and Bizarre. I mean, who the hell's running this joint?
Yeah, you got to wonder, why do they always come up with these mythological references for things? And this is a big thing. I mean, they're invoking certain archetypes here. And this all has to do with archetypal energies. It's, a very old alchemical concept, basically, if you want to call it alchemical, or actually probably more correctly a natural science-based type of a thing when it comes down to it. They always invoke these archetypes, and this is one of the primary building blocks of our reality. When it comes down to it, they use these energy forms, these archetypes, to bring things into fruition or to steer certain kinds of energies towards certain things. So you see, when they name something Project Pandora, they really have something not so nice in mind with all of this.
Well, and certainly,
go ahead.
Well, finish your thought, because I was. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say something ridiculous, but that's beside the point. Go ahead. I'm sure you had something serious to add on.
Well, what I was going to say is that, I mean, if you consider the world as we've been talking about, like Cami Nodell and I have been talking about, and again, I'm not the first one, but really putting again together these ideas that the world is electromagnetic in nature, and it is the modulation of these frequencies, and basically, if you want to say magic, for lack of a better word, is the ability to manifest will using the luminiferous ether, right? The medium in which these electromagnetic waves take place. Then what they're doing is tantamount to a kind of magic, right? So it is what they're doing is materially affecting the nature of our world by changing the waveforms around you, and again enveloping you in this soup of electromagnetic radiation that is demonstrably harmful to organic material.
There's a couple things that are a problem, though. So why do human beings do a thing like that to an environment that they themselves can't withstand. But you see, in the story of Pandora, and I'm going to take a shot in the dark because I haven't read it for a few years, but I'm reasonably sure it's directly connected to Prometheus. So that connection to Prometheus makes this a Luciferian idea, but it also attaches to the myth of how human beings came to be. And so that's part of the archetype. But you've got to ask the question at some point, why would human beings destroy an environment that supports human beings? Right? See where I'm going here?
Well, the first thing I want to ask is, how are certain organizations even cool with it being test on animals? I mean, that's just like something I've always been against. I mean, how many creatures are they torturing and killing? And then if it's going to torture and kill them, then it certainly is going to torture and kill us, isn't it? I mean, isn't that just common sense?
One would think, but I guess their whole thought process on this is, does this really torture and kill things? And, I guess that's the
How about the monkey we were just talking about earlier?
Yeah,
well, you killed the
which I'm
rabbit,
totally not okay with.
He killed a rabbit.
You did invoke common sense, which is neither common, certainly not common. But again, military intelligence, that's a classic oxymoron. Again, departmentalization and need to know, and people who are chain of command, just following orders. You can get a lot of stuff done.
Well, that is what they always say. Just like I should have played this to our friend David Weiss. Couldn't really get 2 words out of the cops that he confronted yesterday. Hey, just following orders. Well, guess what? That didn't work at Nuremberg.
No, it did not. But they keep saying it even now.
Well, this is all, what you guys are referencing, in my view, is the organized takedown of governance and all the things that used to be part of our society. These people will pay the price. It's going to be proof positive that a state government can't even follow their own constitution, never mind the law. They've all violated it. There's no hiding it anymore, and it's all going to come down around their ears. And I think it's the setup for Taco Bell basically being your government at some corporation.
Isn't that the Mexican phone company? Taco Bell?
Exactly. See, that's going to be our state governments. But think about it. Why would the governors do these things that they know are indefensible? If it goes to court, there's not a shred of anything that can protect them. Did they do it knowingly? Are they insider baseball, or are they just so dim-witted they can't quite put 1 and 1 together?
I'm going with a combination of both of those. So
maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think every single governor or politician per se is necessarily inside the club and part of the planning phases of this stuff. But I think there's a lot of useful idiots in the office that they're being used for this stuff and just doing what they're told by their buddies and, not really realizing the ramifications of it. So I think there's a lot of that going on. But I also do think there's some pretty shrewd individuals really pushing things that are in key positions, and they don't get there by accident. So that's one of the things going on. But just as a little bit of an aside, January 1st, 2020. YouTube video hits the surface. It's Pandora. Hey guys, it's Pandora. I'm doing my new unboxing video today. So that's kind of how we got started this year.
But it is kind of remarkable, again, as we look at some of these concepts, that even our language, we always say, it means words have meaning, but the confluence of things like power, right? Who's in power? That indicates, right?
There's
power.
The key.
Who's in charge?
There's the key. Right there, there's the key. Because you can logically put together that if a human being has to eat food, breathe air, drink water, and live in an environment that supports human beings, then it's not in any human being's interest to do some of the things we see going on. So when you begin to logically go down this road, you start to narrow down what's feasibly possible. And the most obvious of these is that they're willing to trash one part of this place we exist where they are not. That's one possibility, implying there's continents or places that we don't know about. But beyond that, you got to start to surmise that they're slaved out to something that could care less.
That's where I'm coming from. Is that those pulling the strings are not human? I guess, for lack of a better word.
We need. Right.
Exactly. So it doesn't really
or for
affect
some reason they're not
them.
affected in the same way as we
Doesn't
are.
affect them the
That
same
would be
way.
the conclusion.
And
Right.
much like the old ones, right? They don't give a crap about humans. It's just not, as much as you don't really care if you step on an ant. It's just
Well, it starts to be the way you see it going, that the energy of depression, torture, just all the negative emotions that you can consider are truly the matrix idea. It's a bit like a battery. It's negative energy feed. Because beyond these ideas, there really is nowhere to go. And when you logically work it down, there's very few options. We already know that Antarctica is probably, who knows? Does it go on forever? Nobody knows. We're all just guessing. And
but it's the secret to something else, that's for sure. There's definitely some secrets there.
Well, the point I would make is alchemy and the old natural sciences prove to us that the lie you're told every time there's a major fire is that this place has been destroyed. No, it hasn't been destroyed. It's been burned to the ground, and that's going to renew. And it's going to renew in a verdant way that hasn't been seen where that fire occurred since the last time it was burned to the ground. People don't like to see their property or their homes burned up. That's tragic. But the point is everybody knows who's involved in these fires. Come back in 50 years and see what it looks like. It'll be verdant. And so that's a bit like what's going on here. As soon as anyone turned off the last microwave and the last chemtrail and put the last drop of fluoride in the water, come back in 100 years, and what will this place be like? It'll be like it ever was, because nature proves that alchemy is correct. It'll just transmute,
come right back.
Until it comes back. So there's that too, but in the short run.
Well, let me ask you this, Crow. So with that being the case, right, it does seem like one of the big pushes is to make an impact on the genetic component with CRISPR and that sort of stuff. And I just hit in the 230 pages here with the DARPA report on these tests and Project Pandora and Bazaar. They noted, again, genetic modifications. As they increase the amplitude, it changes the genetics of those involved in the test. So if they are overwhelmingly changing people's the gene pool by this broad scale deployment of electromagnetic radiation, okay, so now what happens if you fundamentally change the genetics of the the gene pool? Does it come back?
Well, these
At
ideas
least in humans.
Well, these ideas don't work either, for logical reasons. But I mean, we've all heard the story of the Great Flood. I mean, what you're alluding to is almost like nature or a divinity, if you want to think of it in that way, saying, "Hey, this place got jacked. We're wiping it off." But you see, what we see is the encoding always back to Cain, right?
Yeah.
Where Cain's bloodline, they keep hollering, basically attributing themselves to the first recorded murder in history. But the problem with the gene modification idea is that for that to ever make a difference, reincarnation has to not be real. And the truth is, there's not a place in the world back in the day, including Christianity, that did not think people got recycled back here. So if you're going to modify genes and people do get recycled, then what would be your point? You want everyone to look like you or smell like you, you don't know who's incarnating or how they're incarnating, or maybe you do. But so if you go down these roads, then you look at the old ways of thinking about things, and Christianity was no different early on. Before the Vatican got a hold of everything lock, stock, and barrel, they were pretty convinced that human beings could be recycled back here till they got it right. Almost like this is boot camp. You do this till you pass kind of idea.
I've often said that I don't believe in reincarnation, but I didn't in my last life either. So.
Well, we don't know.
That's a joke.
We're not exactly. No, it's point taken. We can only work with what we're handed. But logically, if you were going to modify DNA, you would have to be convinced that things like that aren't possible. What would be the point?
Or maybe they're doing it just for the sake of, trying to incarnate something else here. That's a possibility to consider too.
That is a narrative that has appeared several times. Yes, that they're trying to make a change to make it easier for them to do what it is they do in terms of kind of overlay the software over the hardware platform, if you want to look at it that way. So that's a running narrative. I mean, it's one of these things that I say the one thing I know for sure is that I don't know for sure.
Right.
I can speculate a lot. There's a lot of information. Some of it's conflicting. I remain open-minded to all of it.
So why don't we
I don't
talk
know
about
for
what
sure.
possibilities could exist then?
Which road do you want to run down?
Well,
Here's,
all right, we know that
Oh,
the
there's a
bad
lot of ways to
guys,
go there.
the people in charge, are into some dark sorcery. They're into some really heavy stuff, and they are the ones who are pushing down the ladder to do all these different things, to implement all these technologies that we know are harmful. So what could we infer?
I can take a stab at that.
There we go.
I'm nearly convinced. I guess I don't accept it all the way, but I think it's a strong probability. Their ticket's not punched anymore. They're done. When they're done here, they're done. And those souls, or whatever you want to say, that should go on like every other human being, which has the divine spark, are going to get repurposed for something that contributes. What they're doing is not contributing. So basically the road you have to go down, if you take that possibility, is their back's against the wall. They've painted themselves in the corner. This is all or nothing. So whatever warped thing they're doing, it's because they know their ticket is no longer punched. They've gone too far.
But what does that mean?
I
What,
think-
what do you think that means?
Well, we're pretty sure that human beings don't end. We can. As a matter of fact,
I
I don't
accept
think
that.
I can. I don't think I can pull scripture, tradition, mythology from any culture that lasted any length of time here that doesn't say that a human being has the divine spark and they go on from here. Now, they all describe it in different ways. They might call it heaven, they might call it nirvana, they might call it enlightenment, they might call it reincarnation. Point is everybody pretty much 100% agrees that a human being goes on. But if you read things like the Light of Egypt, or there's many of them, there's this idea that you can go to the dark side without breaking the rules. And the fact that we have night proves that. But if you go too far, you begin to infringe on universal law. And that's why we can back that up with evidence. How come all these people in charge just don't line up all the steel-toed boots, M16s, and all the control of all the military? You know why? Because they can't force human beings to do something they don't want. That's why the straw man is created. Because they get you to say, yeah, I'm that piece of paper. Then they do shit to the piece of paper and make you responsible for what they just did to the piece of paper. That's all a workaround for universal law, because you cannot infringe on the free will of a human being. And why? Because a human being has the divine spark. And why? Because a human being keeps going on from here. So what I'm inferring is, if you read some of these old texts, there's ideas about a dark satellite, there's ideas about the astral world and the dark side of that. All these ideas about what happens to people that go Darth Vader plus 10, and they violated the rules. And what I have come across is their ticket is no longer punched. They're done. Their essence, their soul, their spirit, whatever you want to call it, is going to get recycled into something that's useful. And I don't know how anyone makes the argument that putting 5G in the world is useful to the natural world. It's antithetical.
Well, if I can, I'll take that and just kind of, I don't know, maybe speculate a little bit further, or not too different. But I would take all of that and just add to it that from what I observe, or at least my view on it at this point, is that the why, right? So you've gone kind of through the what. And I'll get to what I think is the why, which is that, again, it's put in, scripture from the Bible, and it's been put in a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different formats, is that it is a spiritual battle. Of course, in scripture it says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and wickedness in high places. So the whole idea that this has to do with a spiritual thing. And back up what you're saying, Crow, is that you cannot do something to a person that they did not agree to. And so by hook or by crook, even even using deception and the sleight of hand trickery. Ultimately, there is a spiritual component, not just a component, but that seems, from my perspective, to be the why behind it all. That everything sort of ultimately relates to that, and I think every person can kind of make up their own mind what that looks like. But that does appear, as you say, from pretty much every ancient text that I can come across, that is the bigger aspect, that everything that we observe in a material sense is one step below that. It's simply the outpouring or the outgrowth of what that spiritual manifestation looks like. It's the physical manifestation of a spirit. Yeah, exactly. So it is basically, it's a tesseract. It's a 4 dimensions is to 3 is 3 is to 2, so it's a shadow, right? So it's a down dimensional shadow. So in that sense, what we observe here in a physical sense is really but a shadow of what's actually happening, and thus the reason that we've been indoctrinated with the idea of a hyper-materialistic world that doesn't include the spiritual aspect, so that we can basically ignore it, make our choices without the understanding of what's actually happening. So anyway, that would be my speculation, at least, is just kind of piggyback on what Crow said.
Anyone who thinks we're going too far out in left field, go look up the number of popes that have been buried in lead-lined caskets. Why would you ever take the time to bury someone in a lead-lined casket? And what is lead? Does everyone understand what lead is? First of all, it's the metal of Saturn. Okay. Secondarily, what lead is used for is to stop any form of light, or basically radiation or energy.
Radiation of any kind.
That's it. So that's what we're talking about here. Why do you do these things? They're slaved out. How they're slaved out, I don't think I even want to know. But it's pretty clear they're slaved out. And if that's because they're desperate that they're slaved out, or it's something even darker, which probably could be. But the point is we go on. And so what happens to a being that doesn't get to anymore, that will do why would you ever want to consider things like extending life by uploading yourself into a computer? That's not life, is it? You see where all these things lead? It's like a desperate measure. All this crap we read about is a desperate measure, and it doesn't take anything more than common sense to say I'm a human being, and that's just really a bad idea.
I'd rather a living man.
Right. I'd rather go hang out under an orange tree with a cricket any day of the week.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it's total inversion of the reality we live in, and in my view, these people, the ones that are doing these things, they're trapped here spiritually. They cannot transcend and move on from this place. So that is why they're seeking so hard to take control here. And I would further speculate, and I've seen some things that kind of back up this idea, that it's those people that misuse these alchemical principles to bring about this inversion in the natural reality, to do something unnatural through the use of alchemy. These are the ones who largely are the ones that would have to say, put themselves in a lead-lined coffin, because it's a total affront to the Creator, in my view. The misuse.
It's a total give, isn't it? It's a total giveaway. Can you imagine trying to even move back in the day a lead-lined casket? There was I don't really recommend shows, but there is a show that used to be on Netflix. I don't even know where it's shot, in Italy, with Italian actors you don't recognize, called Borgia. It's not the one with Jeremy Irons. It's this other one. There is tell after tell after tell. And we're talking about Pope Alexander here, but it just gets to the point where every other scene is basically showing you that stuff went to hell here in a hurry, and these dudes are in a bad place.
Now, if you want to go down the road a little bit with how the Vatican may be involved with some of this dark occultism and such, and like I was saying, the misuse of alchemy, this is something I'm actually exploring in my new book. And I'll give you just a little quick rendition here of some of what I've come upon. So basically, let's think back, all right? If you go back and look at the roots of ancient religion and philosophy, you'll find most of that comes from the mystery schools, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, all of that stuff has moved forward from the mystery schools. So what happened with the mystery schools? After the fall of Egypt, they kind of dispersed around the world and were kind of scattered and fragmented, right? So This equates to an alchemical process. Okay, this is your breaking down. So here's what happened: the mystery schools were broken down, and later on they were exalted alchemically in the creation of Christianity. And as a further aside from that, look at what happened to Rome. Rome burned. So
Yeah.
Rome was broken down in an alchemical process, and the two of these, Christianity and Rome, were merged together in an alchemical wedding of sorts and exalted to the Vatican, which is the ultimate form of governance, which differs from government, combining the religious theologies and the ideologies of the mystery schools combined together in one religious tradition with the empire built on the backs of the Romans and rebranded as the Vatican, and it became the ultimate power in the world. Now we're right now in the process of the breaking down of these structures again with the advent of and the rise of technocracy. So in my view, I think the Vatican is going to be alchemically broken down and merged with technocracy in another alchemical wedding of sorts and exalted to a new form of higher governance yet. And that's kind of the road I take with my views of this stuff. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of that.
I can add something to that, Wayne, because, everybody knows you don't have to be a genius to understand the era you were in 10 months ago is not the era you're about to be in. And I mark that new era after the 21st of December, to be exact, 3 days later. If you want to, get civil about it or civic about it, go ahead and call it the 1st of January. It doesn't matter. It's a drop. It's less than a drop in the ocean of time. I'm reasonably sure now that we're already transitioned into the air age, because people kept saying, you're looking at the Iron Age, and we were taking apart all the 22 master number builders with Iron Man and looking, and we may be, who knows where we are with the Iron Age. But as I began to look back around, I began to realize that as we're looking at the sun on the spring equinox, at the sign behind it, I think we were buffaloed. I think it's the ascendant sign. And the reason I think that is because it was encoded in the Bible so much. Whenever they begin to talk about the Virgin and Virgo's coming over and they talk about the wheat, it is the very moment when the star in Virgo's hand, which represents the corner of the wheat that she's holding, is coming over the horizon. I never would have been able to put this together had it not been for Robert Taylor and the Devil's Pulpit, who showed us one aspect of what was encoded in Scripture. Only one. He missed a lot. He was so busy telling you that you'd been bamboozled that he threw it all out, maybe not understanding or maybe just so disgusted, I don't know. But the point is that was always the ascendant in the eastern horizon. So if it's true that what I just said is correct based on what I've seen done in the Bible, which you can demonstrate, it's not really arguable, it's there, you can verify it, that means that we've transitioned into Aquarius already. Since there's supposed to be 200 or 300 year period transition, it's like a decan of a sign. The first 10 degrees you're getting into, say, Aquarius. The center 10 degrees you're firmly in Aquarian ideas. Then as you get to the last 10 degrees, you're kind of becoming the next sign as you leave the Aquarian behind. And it all works this way. So I think we're probably literally going to do the transition firmly in the middle of the Aquarian sign, which means we're in an air age, which begins to explain all the voices that you hear that are out and popular right now. Almost all of them are going to be fire signs, because fire requires oxygen. But more so, what can we see with the monetary systems? Well, right now, all our monetary and law systems are maritime ideas. They're water ideas, right? The banks of a river, the currency. Well, all that has to become air ideas in an air age, right? Well, what's the first thing they're trying to do? The digital dollar. So now this maritime old water thing will be translated into some kind of crypto, which gets translated through the air. So these old water currencies will now be broadcast through the air. So I think there's a bunch of ways we can demonstrate it, but it goes exactly with what you're saying, Wayne, because that's a fact. If any of this is correct, since we don't have for sure a person we can ask that knows for certain, and we can only use logic to get there, then yeah, all these old systems have to come to an end, and they have to be dissolved, as you were pointing out. And one more thing I would add is when we say alchemy, we're not saying a thing. We're basically saying people used to know how nature works, and that's what alchemy represents. So that's why they hid it, so they can use it to do all these things and everyone be clueless, I would point out.
We should probably
Right,
talk
and
about what
that's-
it means about the different ages, though, how religions themselves seem to change when the age would change with the signs. About every, 2,000 to 3,000 years, that there's not an exact date for them.
Yeah, we don't know.
2600.
2,600 is
Yeah,
what
we-
I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, we do, but we don't know for sure what the timeline is because they've, grappled that pretty hard.
Well, a little bit we do, because we can see when the bull was proffered everywhere that we were in the age of Taurus. We can still see through the Hebrew traditions, they're still blowing the ram's horn. So we know those were Aries ideas. So we can track to an unprecise degree, but I would also point out, with all the law work we've done, we know certainly that the Old Testament and the Hebrew calendar, which goes back to whatever we're up to, I've forgotten, starts at year 0, and that our civil calendar by Pope Gregory XIII starts at year 1, skipping year 0. So I would surmise that we can ballpark. We just don't know for sure why the Hebrew calendar started when it did.
I would also surmise, though, that this transcends just religious traditions and stuff like that, too. I mean, you're talking the change of the age changes everything. Right. So when you're talking about we're coming from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, that's denoting that even things like sciences and technologies are going to change from something that's water-based to something air-based.
Right.
So you're going to look at travel differences and things like that. And if we go back to the before this last age, the age of Pisces, what was it? Did you say it's the age of?
Before Pisces would have been Aries. Before that
Aries.
would have been
Aries,
Taurus.
the ram.
Taurus.
So when you see all
back,
the Egyptian bull things, you're looking before the
Yeah.
Well, it's the Judaism thing. That's why you see the Moses with the ram's horn and all that.
So even think about the technological advances and stuff during those ages. If you go back, is Aries is that an air sign or is that a what is that?
That's a fire sign. So
That's a fire
I think
sign.
Aries and Leo and Sagittarius, which I am, are all fire signs.
Okay, so then before that would be Taurus, which is the bull. What sign
That'd
is
be an
that?
earth sign.
That's an earth sign. So that's largely when farming took hold as a thing. As a technology, so working the earth. So you could see how this stuff transitions forward. You could look at all different aspects of this and understand that, these are some real world-changing things that occur with this switching of the age. And I think a lot of the ancient peoples understood this idea better than we do today, that, these natural energies can be leveraged upon for these things. And I think there's a portion of people in our world today that understand this. These would be your people deep at the highest levels of the secret societies and, these dark occultists and technocrats that basically run the show, the ones that we would speculate are stuck here. I think these are the ones that know and are trying to leverage these energies, in their advantage.
Think of all the tells, Wayne. Think of all the tells that we've uncovered. Why would you lie about how an equinox works? And once you understand that the equinoxes are one big lie because they just want you to believe some false thing on the wrong day, then you begin to question, why do we do daylight savings time, which is directly related to the equinoxes? Then we come along and we do things like eclipses. Why was that lied about? Then we do things like space and the moon landing. Why was that lied about? Because this is the way things actually work. And you see, 15 years ago, people would have been saying, "Oh, you New Age dope-smoking idiots doing your astrology nonsense," which was the whole reason for trying to come up with a word like sky clock so we could think about it again in some reasonable way. But this is the way things apparently work.
Okay, so now Crow has led exactly where I was hoping to go into wild speculation, into left field here, based on again, this is wild speculation, but I'm curious to get some feedback on this. So in the last couple of days, I've been sent some interesting photographs from a few people, one of which indicated he took a photograph right about sunset, but pointing the opposite direction from the sun. In fact, due east where the sun rises, and it looked just like a sunset. And then he took a video pointing back in both directions. And this is in the UK. And then the next day, double rainbows, and then correlating this with the fact that we've seen a number of double sun images. I've been getting sent these from all over the place. And of course, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Twitter and a couple of other major media platforms have basically banned hashtag sun and film the sun. So is it possible then that what we're seeing? Oh, and then just randomly watched a video that premiered today from FPV Research Angel. Is that the name of the channel? That indicated the historical paintings of that these came out over periods of time, that there were multiple suns seen right at the change of ages, that there were these astronomical changes that all tied together that were observed worldwide with multiple suns, some of them with 3 suns. So, Crow, you want to speak to that?
Yeah,
that maybe they are trying to occlude these things?
Well, of course they are. Of course they are. When I first filmed the double sun idea, and I held it for so long, and then Jason and I finally decided to run it, actually made the end of Shoot the Moon, and we got into Falconelli, we realized there's really no argument here. All the old tracing board, Masonic tracing, it all showed the same thing. There's a source beyond. But think about this. When you take apart the Devil's Pulpit or any of these other things that showed us singular aspects of the myriad, and I mean myriad ideas that are buried in Scripture, where you don't even know how deep it goes. For all I know, it's 1,000 levels. I have no idea. To the point where even now I'm beginning to understand, when you look at the 10 Commandments, the first one is number 1 because of the meaning of 1. And these are things that no one ever got shown. Now, to come back around, when you look at how the Scripture encoded the saints, what are you looking at? You're looking at a saint playing the role of a son in one of the stations of the sun in the acceptable year of the Lord. So in other words, this dude's playing the part of the sun in fall in a particular month because he's gathering the last fruits and all these things. We've demonstrated. It's not arguable. But what it tells you is it's a different character, isn't it? This guy playing the sun here is not the guy playing the sun a month before. So what it tells you is the sun in Pisces is not the sun in Aquarius. How the hell could it be? If all these new things come and now we're not a water age and we're an air age, then something's vastly different. As a matter of fact, in this case, the difference between air and water is pretty extreme, right?
And doesn't iconography lead us to believe that way back that Saturn was the sun? I mean, This is weird stuff, but
no,
the golden age.
That. Yeah, I can get around that too. This is all allegory. Saturn was never the sun, but the kind of Satanistic Luciferian, whatever the hell you want to call it, which none of it is accurate. Their trinity supposes the sun and the moon, which any trinity will from the sky clock point of view, but their third stool leg is Saturn. Now, most of us don't appreciate Saturn because if you're not getting it right, you're not growing up, you're going to get wrapped across the knuckles nonstop till you get it right. But in a more perfected age, it would be bliss under Saturn. There's a lot to know about Saturn. We pretty much only recognize the dark aspects, the Grim Reaper, the Chronos, and we don't understand that that's just one side of a coin and everything has its polarity. But you see, in a trinity that's not that, Saturn is not the sun. Now, what I said about Saturn was there's this idea of Arcadia as one of the examples that was like it's like a Garden of Eden, all right? That's the mythical thing. And in that time, you're ruled over by Saturn. That's the idea of it. So it's all allegory. But to get back to the point, I would proffer the idea that the sun in the age of Pisces is not the sun in the age of Aquarius. It can't be. And even if it somehow is physically the same body, it's completely metamorphosed or transmuted, if I dare use the word, into something other. And the reason that works is because all the 7 luminaries, so you'll count the sun and the moon and then the other planets that are bright enough to see with your eyes. That was the traditional, classic, ancient 7 luminaries that matter. You're looking at all these aspects of energies that can possibly happen to us, but they end up being, in a way, the lens of the sun, or the influence of the sun is what it's like when the sun shines light, it's white light, but if you take a prism, there's 7 colors there. Maybe that's a better allegory to show what I'm trying to say here. But my point is it doesn't surprise me in the least. Now, I said years ago, people are going to see another sun or a source sun or something. We're about to change.
It's like a stained glass window. It's a different color filter coming across.
That's my
that's letting
take
the
on it,
light
yeah.
come through.
That's my
that's
take, is that there's a source probably outside the firmament, and the sun itself is what we see inside of it. It's a representation of
reflection idea works.
Yes.
Albini,
Yeah.
for the as above, so below. What Jason and I put a number of quotes in Shoot the Moon, and one of them is from Chekhov. Don't tell me the moon is reflecting light. Show me a glint of glass, and a glint of light on broken shard of glass. And the idea is always that we are a shadow or a reflection in a gross material way of things that are above us. And the idea of that can be demonstrated by the biblical narrative of the firmament separating waters from waters. Well, why would that be? If gravity was real, which it is not, you could think in that way, because the gross waters are much more heavy and dense. You see, the etheric waters that you would associate with an idea like heaven, those are more etheric. So naturally, it would be like oil and water or something like that. But we have a firmament separating these two ideas. Yeah. And so it's almost like the gross manifestation of this heavy, gross material we call water is just like a shadow reflection of the etheric light.
And I'd even go a step further and say it's probably a multidimensional. I mean, this is actually what we were talking about, before, about hypermaterialism being the illusion to get you to not see, right, the higher dimensional aspect. I agree with that. Yeah.
They claim in some places there's 7, that everything is based
or 12.
on 7.
Yeah, I'd say or 12. There's 7, 7, then it goes up to 11, and then 12 is the completion of all of it, and that would be completing with the ultimate. Was it the tree of life? The Kabbalistic tree of life goes to that 12th, the last, the name of God, right? The tetragrammaton. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's dependent on what the old writings make it seem dependent on where you are. If you go up a level from where we are, then it gets more complex.
By the way, in the new Bill and Ted movie, and I just got the image, I'm going to drop it in here and show everybody. They did a little nod to Saturn. Quite a good one, in fact. Let me get the. Has anyone else seen this yet?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I do intend
I watched
to
it the other night because I had a feeling like that they just couldn't help themselves. It's 2020. We gotta.
They can't help themselves.
Yeah, and of course it's got your SJW crap in there.
Well, in the age of Aquarius, Saturn and Uranus co-rule. And by the way, I would point out to everyone who gives a damn, what is the metal of Uranus? Of course, that is aluminum, right?
Aluminium.
And so 80% of old people lose their minds now because of the amount of aluminum.
Yep.
And that was always viewed, the ideas of Uranus as affecting us more at some later, more advanced time. But there's a co-rule here. This is going to be a big month, probably. And by the way, one of the possibilities in this month, which has been diminished since all this nonsense started, is revolution. So they say.
Why is it not taking it?
Well, going back then to what Crow just said about aluminium, right, and its direct correlation to Alzheimer's is, of course, with the microparticulate aluminum, barium, strontium, but especially the aluminum, once it crosses the blood-brain barrier, has been done and shown with the microparticulates that, again, if you've ever taken aluminum and stuck it inside of a microwave and seen the results, well, it's not pretty. So now imagine that inside your head with, going back to the topic of this very show, microwave radiation. Yeah,
ding, 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 winner,
ding, ding, ding. Yeah, that's it's not pretty. And
well, even the Saturn is dark side. I think the idea is that Uranus will be the day ruler of the age we're going into, and Saturn's the night ruler. Just to put another grim.
Doesn't Uranus encapsulate the octave idea as well?
Stepping up. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. That it used to be that people thought of aluminum and Uranus and the effects of Uranus is like we got to get further and more advanced than we are for those influences to mean much to us. Almost like the idea. Now, here's an idea for you. Think of all the sky watchers back in the day that didn't have any any pollution. They mapped the sky probably better than anyone ever has. They mapped the influences, but they didn't know there was a Pluto. So the idea came to be that when the human consciousness has lifted enough, you'll see a new so-called planet, a new luminary. Now that idea is on us now. There's supposed to be, and I've read it, I forget, there's supposed to be a bunch more luminaries that we can't detect yet because we haven't ascended mentally and spiritually enough to detect them. But when we do, that we will. And so think about, how is it that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were unknown to the greatest sky watchers, charters, and understanders of all time? How could that be? They knew there were rings. They knew there were rings on Saturn.
Oh, isn't that cute? Well done.
Yeah,
Jason.
I just had to do a screenshot of it because it wouldn't let me save it as an image. But here you are. Look at this. This was the end of the movie when the end of the world was supposed to be occurring, and lo and behold, look what's in the sky. Why is that
Yeah,
there?
but look what's behind it. It's eclipsing the sun.
Yes, yeah, it was a black hole Saturn.
Nice. Well, nothing to see
Wow.
here.
Yeah, they just can't help
And
themselves.
look
can
at
they?
the antenna in front of it.
There's also somewhere on there, I think it says the end of the world or something to that effect. So anyway,
And it is the idea of the black hole
Here.
sun.
It says on that little light sign, it says "end is near."
there you go. I knew it said something like that somewhere on there.
Yeah, the end of the age.
I only watched
Bastard.
it once, so I have to.
I got news for everyone listening. This place will be here in a million years.
Well, yeah, probably. Just we might not be.
No, we definitely won't be. We won't. Most of us will continue on, I'm sure, except for those who lose our ticket for being too dark and evil and not giving a damn about living things.
But isn't this ridiculous? Like I was laying in bed watching this the other night. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me! Not only are Bill and Ted no longer the savior, the chicks are, but they had to get that in there too. I mean,
But think about what we're looking at here. So you could almost argue that this is a factual, if in fact what I have said is correct. We're through the transition period. We're firmly going to be in Aquarius here as soon as we come through the Great Conjunction, or maybe the first year, whatever the hell, in that little space of time. That this would be accurate, because now all of a sudden you're in a place that's supposed to be night ruled. See, it's nighttime. Why? Maybe that's supposed to be the moon behind it. It looks like the sun to me. But you see, why does it got to be dark? And then they say the end is near. See, they got to make everything miserable. If it's the end of an age, why does that need to be miserable? You see what I'm getting at here? They're always trying to down your mental state, and there's no reason for it. We're going to wake up that day. There's going to be another day. The sun's going to rise. You know, it'll just be a different age.
Anyway, let's get rid of that. I don't want to stare at Saturn all night.
Well, I would like this age to maybe go a little bit differently, maybe, than things have gone in the past. Maybe this time, we all don't end up as debt slaves.
Well,
For the
first time,
to be fair, we only did that for the last portion of this age, a minuscule portion.
That's true. Good point. Well, why then? Why would it happen at the very end? How did that come to be if there's a whole age before that? This is just all of history.
We don't know, because the jokers who put all this in place hid the real history. All these other times that are known about, we don't know about them.
The positive note I'd like to throw out here, that unlike before, I think for the first time in at least the past, I don't know, a couple thousand years maybe, that there are a lot of minds. We're still a minority, but there are a lot of minds trying to work towards a positive resolution, as opposed to just going about their daily business, most people being peasants. And most people still are peasants. But I think there's a lot more of us kind of people trying to at least enlighten ourselves away from the bad guys than ever have been in history in a long time, I would think.
If that wasn't true, censorship wouldn't need to exist. You can prove that that's factual just by what we see around us. And by the way, everything going on is unsustainable. This was rushed in. There are so many things that make this apparently rushed quicker than they wanted to do it, or maybe delayed, either way. But when things come on, when a fire gets to a blaze so abruptly and so quickly, the rules of nature prove to us this is unsustainable. So it might suck, you know. I'd hate like hell to think I got to live the rest of my life being as old as I am dealing with this crap, but this can't last. There's no way this can be sustained for any length of time.
No, I think the human spirit will just rise above all of it, and we see that going on because people by and large are waking up to the fact that a lot of this stuff is just low-minded nonsense just to keep us down and keep things dark. And I think people are really tiring of that.
Well,
we could see that is the reason for the censorship, because there are more minds coming online with this whole idea and understanding this is not sustainable. This can't be the way that we want it to be. This is not what we want as a future for ourselves and for our children. So we've got to do something positive here and change this, and that's the whole point here. We're at the precipice of a new age, and with that comes new possibilities, and our future is what we make of it. So the thing is, we need not to stand idly by and be complacent like we have been. We need to take an active part in shaping this future rather than letting some dingbat technocrat decide what he wants the future to be and we just all follow suit. We need to take part and speak up, be adult human beings, and contribute to this new world that we're going into.
I agree. And that's another thing. Like, I saw somebody today talking about how this is why I don't have any children, or I won't have children. And I thought, no, this is wrong. We need to have children. We need to
especially
have
us
our own
kind of people.
children.
It's why we're here.
Teach them, and we need to teach them the right way to do things, because that's how things are going to change. Look at how all these cults and occultists have targeted our children. That's what they go for first and the hardest.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what we really need to do, is be focusing on our children just as much as they do.
Agreed. And in fact, and again, I don't know if you got the message I sent before, Jason, but I did get that call. So I'm going to have to leave here in just a moment.
Okay.
Unfortunately, a little bit early. But I did want to add this. I have been kind of continuing through this document, and I did find some rather, I'd say interesting, but I guess disturbing, when they increased some of the tests. Longitudinal test on increased microwave radiation, specifically, and again, this is still looking in that 2.4 to 4.0 megahertz bandwidth. These were some of the, they were looking at the chromosomal changes, and so these are some of the results that they found. Down syndrome, brachycephaly, slanted pepperebral fissures, epicanthric folds, palmar simian lines, malformed ears, broad and or short neck, malformed fingers and hands, nasal abnormalities, abnormal palate, brush field spots, and broad or short trunk, but leading with Down syndrome due to exposure and to microwave radiation in those specific bandwidths. So it does have, again, chromosomal aspects to it. I don't necessarily buy all the story they tell us about DNA. I think that everything they told us is a lie, so I'm not going to believe that one.
I agree with that.
Just as the way they tell us, because everything they tell us is a lie, so I'm not going to accept one part of it as being accurate. However, we do see abnormalities here and there, and these are some of the abnormalities that were presented due to increased amplitude radiation in those particular bandwidths. So take it for what it's worth. This is, again, documents from mid-1967, but again, coming out in that same request, FOIA request from ARPA, which is DARPA, essentially the precursor of DARPA. So they've known this for a very long time. It's not as if we didn't know. It seems, again, by design, to give an excuse to put this into broad deployment. So they just added, oh, hey, look, we can carry signal on it. Let's use that. So people will accept it. It seems to be the case.
DNA is a verbatim 91, so the 1 and 9 idea again.
There you go.
So it's just more poppycock.
Yeah, again, I don't accept pretty much anything that they tell us these days. But anyway, it's been a pleasure again, as always. I do have to run a little bit early to go pick up some stuff from the pharmacy before they close. So thanks again for having me. Again, gentlemen, Karen, it's great to be with you. Crow, always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah.
Jason and Wayne, we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Now we know where he's getting his extra cocaine.
Oh boy,
it's pharmaceutical cocaine.
It's pharmaceutical grade cocaine.
That's
they
the
get
good
lots
stuff,
of
right?
leftovers there.
Yep, and heroin number 4. That's the good stuff right there. All right, guys, take care.
Later. Do we have anything in this document still, Wayne, that we want to go through, or shall we just chat this out at the end here?
I think maybe we could just chat it out because it's an extremely long document, and a lot of it is really, really tied up in, just very data-heavy type of stuff here. It's a lot of charts. It's a lot of data sets and things like that. Just talking about a lot of these different tests and stuff that they've done. The bottom line is this: they've done a lot of different microwave radiation testing and used all different kinds of frequencies and bandwidths and all of that kind of stuff with it. And they've come to the conclusion that, first of all, it's harmful to human beings and animals and everything else.
Absolutely.
And second of all, they could actually modify behaviors with it. In a subset of this Project Pandora, especially that one called Project Bizarre, which is a sub-project of it, they discovered they could change people's moods and alter their behaviors and their emotions and stuff using these energies. So with that being said, I mean, they found a way to weaponize this long ago, and
what
we could see
reminds
the
me
results today.
I meant to mention this to you. You ever see these ads, where they're doing the latest drug where you got a rash on your skin and they're pushing this drug and then they tell you it could kill you or, give you a heart attack. They do all these things. But do you ever look at the
Rectal
weird
bleeding.
name that's actually assigned them? Like they'll call it Pulvitrex or something will be the branded name, but the actual name of the drug, they all look like magical spell words. Every one of them.
I don't think that's
now
by
with an
accident
expecto
either.
patronum.
No. And they're weird too. Like all of them end in MAB, MAB. Then there's a whole other set. I was counting them. I counted 4 different sets. Whole bunch of them end in MAB. But they're just they're bizarre, to say the least.
Yeah, they are. They are, and you'll notice they use a lot of X's and stuff in them as well, in the names.
Well, why would that be?
I don't know. Does X represent something in particular, Jason?
What was it? I heard Bill Maher. Yeah, I heard Bill Maher make fun of it once in his little smug way. He said, "Well, if you get a medication with X or V in the name, that's powerful stuff."
God, that guy is a cunt.
Yes,
I don't know
he
how else
is.
to put it. Every time I see him, he's just got a face you want to smash.
He does. Him and Jimmy Kimmel. I feel the same way about Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, I don't like
can't stand it.
You kissed your mom with that mouse, Jason Lindgren?
Oh God, he awful. One time I saw one of those tabloid clips of Bill Maher out in LA, and he was with this Amazon transvestite 6-foot tall thing in
It's probably a good way to describe it.
seriously, it dwarfed him.
I don't think
he looks like someone's Semitic grandmother at this point, anyhow.
That's a guy who I think is a pure example of someone who wasn't doing that great, got before the Lord Lucifer and said, "Please, I'll do anything to be successful," and I think he got it. I think he had to get on his knees first, but
And he's not even that popular.
well, he was doing quite well for what? Remember, he used to have what was it called? Politically Incorrect.
Right,
Politically
he got
Incorrect.
booted off the air for 9/11 so they could build up the name and put controversy. Then HBO picked him up and put him off the charts on. I think it's Politically Incorrect now, isn't it? Or no?
It's oh God, I used to watch it. I don't know what it's
Real
called.
Time. Real Time is the news show. Politically Incorrect was the one where he dared to say something about fake hijackers on a fake 9/11. So they booted him off. So that was all the buildup. But he was a fixture at the Playboy Mansions, apparently.
I'm not surprised.
Well, I think he
looks
ate
like
the poop
someone's
crackers and
grandmother.
kept eating them. I'm not kidding. He's one of those people that I absolutely think said that he would sell out, and nothing's off the table.
I really wouldn't doubt that, actually. Like,
He just feels that way.
He does. He's got that creepy, just, I don't know, kind of energy about him, I guess you could say.
Well, as Crow was saying, he's also got a little bit of that smugness, like he knows something. So he's probably another rung up the ladder, maybe two at the most, of like the vileness center. He's like, oh yeah, I go slightly higher than you, so that I might be getting shit on in my head, but I get to shit on a few more people below me.
Think about what all those political talking heads do. Like, people used to love John
Stewart?
John Stewart used to love that guy. These are the scum of the earth people. These people do more damage to our society than almost anyone else I could think of, because what they're doing is playing on the red-blue false paradigm, and they're creating a hate mindset. We're blue, so we're going to hate on these guys. So what they did is they wrapped it in comedy. They used to do it in other ways, and they realized they could make fun of it, and people would become iconic. I can still remember the first time Jon Stewart showed up on, what's the tall guy's name who has the radio station? Fart Man. What's his name?
Oh,
Howard Stern?
Howard Stern, yeah.
Howard Stern. The first time he showed up, he's like, well, who the hell are you? Making fun of him. And that was right before he went through the stratosphere. But what these people do is they create the hate mindset. Think of everything you don't like about CNN and Fox, and then multiply it by 1,000, because that's what these guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they like to use these comedians and stuff as, a means of putting some information out there, like putting these little tells out for people, but at the same token they use it as a poke in the eye, and they turn it into kind of a farce, so people don't really take it seriously. So that's one of their favorite things to do.
Get away with more. Right?
Yeah.
Well, they could be used as revelation of the method too, because people are going for a laugh and they're open to whatever the comedian is saying, but in reality, what's really going on there?
Right, that's true. I mean, that's the thing that is one of the methods that they use to do that for revelation of the method. They'll put out there the information in the form of something that people aren't going to take seriously in type of an entertainment type platform, and comedy kind of fills the bill perfectly for them, because they could go ahead, they could do things like satire with it and stuff like that, and then people just see it purely as this form of entertainment, and they don't really view it as something tangible that could really be going on. They see it as, kind of a joke when it comes down to it, and that's the whole intention behind giving comedians this kind of limelight.
Joke's on us.
This is what, right.
Well,
the joke's on us.
It's unbelievable how obvious is it, though, because Stewart had Colbert on his show. Colbert goes to do a spinoff, which is a show which becomes very popular to the point where he becomes a late night guy on his own. Yep. But what's he doing? He goes from
hating on Trump. That's all he does.
Yeah, we're a blue guy show. Then he goes to faking like he's a red guy, an extreme red guy. I mean, it is so transparent as to be, if you're in 7th grade and you can't recognize what's going on here, what's going on. And it goes to show the influence that these people have. And basically what they're doing is showing up for work every day with a can of gasoline, and they're flaming hatred fires. That's what they do.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what their job is. And, the same could be said for politicians. It's the same kind of thing. It's just showbiz for the ugly. So that's where you go. That's politics for you. Same kind of idea. So, you could see how they just keep kicking the can down the road with this stuff and causing more and more division among the people.
Did you see how much effort has been put to defame Trump lately, so they can try to claim the electorate is all about Biden? Like, they used South Park to make him look like a dick. Then they did the whole COVID thing, which, by the way, it only takes 3 days to catch COVID and be back out in the world. But
amazing, isn't it?
He shows up in front of cameras looking like someone took an orange can of spray paint and unevenly sprayed his face. It is so blatantly obvious, and most people can't remember, because I can still remember the Nixon-Kennedy thing, and the whole thing there was, it was the first time we realized only handsome people could become president. It was the whole reason Nixon lost was because he was sweating, and JFK was such a dapper young man. But did you see him on camera looking like someone spray painted a pumpkin with 3 shades of orange? Unreal. And people just can't possibly think for more than 2 seconds to understand what's being put in front of them.
It is October, so he's got to have the October colors.
Manipulation, man. Manipulation.
The orange
All of
resolves to 33. Not a coincidence.
Yeah, the only color, right?
Also, not a coincidence. Trump caught COVID 33 days before the election. So amazing, isn't it?
It's a clown
What?
show. You know, Jason, we should just take the 1924 speech from the governor of the Central Bank of England and just take that one paragraph and just make that the image for every episode we ever do from now on until people grow the hell up and quit being
And call
red
every
and blue.
episode, "Do you get it yet?"
Yeah. Are you awake yet? Hello? Are you colorblind?
Well, to pull this back around to what we started with, Karen, spreading hate and having a ton of negativity is the exact opposite of the kind of thing we do and the kind of gathering we're planning on having. It's all about open-mindedness, higher-mindedness, challenging things that we know are poppycock, that kind of thing. So if you want to talk about that again for a minute before we sign off tonight, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the opposite that we want to have there. We want to have great conversations, socializing. We want to build connections. We want to meet new people. We want to get to know each other face to face beyond a YouTube name or a YouTube channel. We need to get to know each other on a real level, a real personal level, and have face to face communication. And, you know, because this is something that they're trying to take from us. They're trying to take away our ability to interact with each other on
Wear
a
a
human
mask
level.
everywhere you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many things that go on when we have to social distance and wear a mask. I mean, the list is huge of things that it affects and the way it alters our behavior and makes our life different and hard and not normal. So that won't be going on here. Mask free. Everybody's open. Everybody is going to be ready to just have a good time and not worry about these things, and hopefully talk about solutions too. You know, talk about your ideas of what you want to do in the future, things you want to do, things you might be able to meet other people who want to do these things too. If you want to start living off grid, if you have, you know, a business that involves these things, this is a great place to meet other people who want to do those things too. You know, we really need to start becoming more solution oriented in these meetings that we have, I think, too, is another thing we need to start looking at, you know. Really exchange information, start building our communities, you know, of like-minded people. Really, that's what we need.
All right, what's the
Right?
website one more time? Let's get that out there.
Flattoberfest, flattoberfest.com. So we're going to have presentations, exhibits, food, drink, all day long. Come meet us. We're also meeting the day before. And before I forget, there's going to be a meetup the day before. There's a park across the street from the venue. So if you get to Greenville, if you're coming from out of town and you get to the venue Friday, then there will be a meetup at the park across the street. It's a big gazebo that's got power and everything. It's not like, you know, it's not just a regular park. It's a big, like, pavilion type thing out there. And so we'll be meeting there. And then also the Shrine Club, which is right across the street, Fridays has a bar that's open to the public, and they have karaoke. So I know there's a few people looking forward to do karaoke, right? The night before. So that's what's going on. Go to the website, get tickets. You can see the map. I guess I should add a page that talks about that meetup the day before. So maybe I'll do that to make that easier for everybody. And that's it.
All right.
Oh, man. Karaoke and Shriners. What could possibly go wrong?
Who's buying the drinks?
Bring your flower pots, people. You'll need to wear them on your heads.
I'm the Grand Stuba.
Wayne, what do you want to talk about before we sign off for this week?
Nothing much. Just new
How's the
book should
book?
be dropping some. Yeah, I'll plug the book here quick. New book should be dropping sometime probably next week, as long as everything goes on cue here.
Well,
So,
what the hell, man? You and I are about to do a show, and we're like covering numbers, and you're dropping your new book. How did we get sideways there, buddy?
Well, we didn't really get sideways. We could definitely discuss the new book because a lot of the work on numbers and stuff that we're going to be doing when we record that show here next week is a lot of the research and stuff that I actually had derived in the writing of the book.
So you need
numbers
to
are
assert
integral.
you need to assert yourself at the opening of that, Wayne, so that we don't drop the ball with everything. We need to cover your book at the opening of our recording.
Okay, yeah, we'll get there,
Yeah.
definitely. So I hope to have it out and available for sale come the time that we record. We'll see. It all depends on what exactly goes down this weekend here. I have a lot to juggle here, just to so people know. I'm a busy guy. Let's put it that way. But I'm looking forward to getting the book done and out there and ready, for publication and be out for sale hopefully sometime early next week. So it should hopefully be available by the time that the episode that I'm recording with you guys airs. So it'll be the first place I really announce it, and it's the first place I'll really push it.
We need to open with that, Wayne.
No, I appreciate it, as always. And other than that, nothing much else going on. That's just been kind of keeping me busy for the past several weeks, in addition to all the normal stuff I got going on. So,
By the way, Karen, is there anything about filming or live streaming or any of that stuff since you're... okay, I see you've already answered there. I saw a bunch of people jumped in on that. I don't know how we might do that. I've got cameras that I can bring since I'm driving. Maybe I can help with that. It's something we could talk about beforehand if you would like.
Sure. I guess we would have to get with Nathan on that too.
Yeah, because we'd have to take a feed off of whatever his board he's using. I don't remember what he says he's... I haven't really gotten to talk to him more than here and there, so I'll bring it up to him. I mean, even if just my P1000 films the stage, I mean, that
I know
that could do
we're
good
talking
enough.
about setting up some cameras on Wi-Fi and possibly doing it that way, because last year I streamed Flattoberfest through my P900.
How did that look?
Not super great because I had it like going through my phone.
I saw people doing it on their phones though, right?
Yeah.
Last year I saw a bunch of people just live streaming off their phones.
Yeah, I'm sure people will stream it off their phone. I would stream it on my channel if I could stream, but I can't stream to my channel right now, and I can't do it until December. Maybe if I can get it working, I might be able to stream it to Unveiling This Realm, that channel, and then whoever else is there can live stream it too. I'm sure there'll be multiple streams.
Well, we could always just talk about it. I mean, I've got my Black Magic cameras. I've got a P1000, but if you got 900, it's kind of about the same. But all right, we'll figure it out. Let's see. The big thing is going to be the audio. Make sure it sounds really, really good, which is what I'd want to talk to Nathan about. So we could put our heads together and see if we can come up with something, because, I mean, I think people who can't make it would really, 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 really appreciate that. But we'll talk about that.
I know. I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, me too. And then it's out there for everybody too, for even for posterity's sake. So, all right, Crow, that brings us down to you and me. We just did a killer episode with a gentleman who went by KL. And, of course, we had Collab to Carl back to talk about some really important stuff. But how about this one we're dropping at midnight EST?
Right, I think it's 2:58. Kurt
2:58.
Kallenbach is back. It's not too often you're going to hear me get called out on my own show for good reason. That happens in this show. Language matters, and the idea I'm expressing is valid, but the language I'm using to do it is not, and I get called out center stage, rightly, I might add, to the point where I even submitted the title to make sure that the language in what we're covering is so critically important. And when you do what Jason and I do, you're just at a dead run, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. And so the idea that we can stop and read Black's Law Dictionary just doesn't come into it unless that's what we're doing for the current show. But this is a big one. We did the KL show, which actually broke my server like a number of times because the traffic was off the charts. And that was maybe the closest we've seen to legally interacting with the system to gain back control at some level, but nonetheless it is still within the system. What we're covering with Kurt Kallenbach is the spiritual realities that drive all of this, which typically get overlooked by people looking at law, to the point where you could make a parallel. How many people out there understand that when you put a mask on your face, you're covering your spirit, right? Your breath is your spirit. So if you're a spiritual person and you think of the Holy Ghost or the Divine Spirit, that's what you're covering with a mask. You're using a corporate veil to do it. So it's a social contract that is not only inconveniencing you, but it is spiritually coming at you. And the force and the tricks that are used to employ it are all unmasked, to make a bad pun, in this episode. We go back to the foundation of where it's all started, and we cover this with Kurt. But I think it's getting to be more important that people understand you got to make a call here. Are you going to try to be within the system and defend yourself from being bullied by the system, or is your ultimate goal to be outside the system? And Kurt, who we have on, his goal is to not be part of the system at all and still be able to live as a human being. Anyhow, that'll go out at 12:01 tonight, Eastern Standard Timer, NYC time.
By the way, we are going to try and get KL back as soon as we possibly can. We just did that episode.
I have a tentative, by the way.
Oh, he's already gotten back. I know he was busy for a short time there. So, yeah, as soon as possible. There's just so much more to talk about. And try to understand, folks, because I know Kirk really got upset about this. He really didn't like the way KL came at it, but you've got to understand that there's different levels of these things, and Kurt just wants all or nothing, and I totally get that, and I totally respect that. He's coming at it from a purely spiritual point of view. What KL was talking about was trying to take control of your accounts, for lack of a better term, but still being part of the system, because you know what, you may need a credit card for some things. You know, that maybe there's just something about your life. I mean, it's just the world we're set up in. Maybe you want to buy a house because you don't have $200,000 to drop on something. You know, things like that. Like, you may want to still be a part of the system, and that's what we're talking about with all these people, is different ways of coming at different things. Alphonse is fantastic with dealing with day-to-day bullshit, especially when it comes to throwing an affidavit in one of these pricks' faces. It's like, oh yeah, here you go. Deal with that. You have to deal with me. That kind of thing.
Right. And these things are all threaded together. Right, Jason? We've done a run now. Lena Poo is coming up. And what you're going to find is, here's the irony. These guys don't see eye to eye. Most of these guys who have figured out aspects of the law, they don't agree per se with the next guy down the line. What Jason and I did is we finally said, what works? What can we show that has successfully been implemented? In my view, our job is to show all these avenues, because if everybody put their attention on being within the system but gaining back control, to me that's moving in the right direction. For my part, I think people like Clint Richardson, who I don't agree with a lot of what he's putting down, but his overall premise I agree with 100%. And that's kind of where Kurt is too. There has to be some point in the future where the dream is to not be under any of it. But we're not going to get there overnight. And so that means that people that want to be in the system got to have a way. People who just want to be in the system, but when someone hassles them, know what to do with an affidavit. Or like Lena Poo, who are going to live in the system, but you come at me with 5G and it's going to be your butt. I think we need all these aspects. But for my money, Kurt's laying down the foundation for the eventuality that someday we're out from under all of it.
Yeah, I think Kurt's going for the brass ring. Like, if we can get it to that point, that's the whole thing. So anyway, we're going to keep going at this. That's for sure. We're not just going to say, okay, well, we figured it all out, because I think we're far from that. But the big thing with what Crow and I are doing are, have you had successes? Then let's talk about them. Because we have to look at what is working and what's not working and start whittling it away, because there's just so much to this law thing. And here's the other thing. I strongly suspect that at times they probably change things in the system too. So it's probably something where you have to keep up with it. Wouldn't you think that, Crow?
I'm sorry, I lost my mic for 2 seconds. Ask me that one more time.
I would think that as we're going along here, there's probably changes even being made to the system itself. So even if you do figure out something, it might not work next year just because they've changed something.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. You can't be completely prevented from going for your freedom. That's a violation of universal law. But what I think you're spot on. If say, 5,000 people went for the KL method, I would expect that measures would be taken to try to make it harder or almost impossible. But it doesn't matter, because 20 years ago, we didn't know what we didn't know, and now we all know. Anyone who's paying attention knows. And so this too has a shelf life. We're not doing this for much longer, and I think what they're doing to the state governments right now proves it. They're setting them all up for failure. These people have violated their constitutions. They've violated the rights of everyone, to the fact that they've become guilty of tyranny or sedition even. That's what's been set up here. So what comes next? So I think they're already preparing the system we exist in to fail and probably trying to concoct something else. But I'll say it again, this is unsustainable, and they're going down hard. I just hope I get to live long enough to see it.
The thing to keep in mind before we sign off here is that they are in the wrong with what they're doing. What they're doing is fraud. I know they try and convince themselves that they've got us fooled, and, we're telling you, and they're patting themselves on the back for their cleverness. The truth is that what they're doing is wrong. It absolutely is all negativity.
They're doing it to babies.
Yeah. Before you even could possibly know anything, they're doing it to you. They're getting you in the system, and they're doing it to your parents who just don't know a damn thing, and therefore the system just keeps going on and on and on. But anyway, I think we've said enough about that. Tune in for that at 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. EST. That's the new show, and of course we'll be having another one in a couple days. That's going to do it. Thanks everybody for being here. Karen, it was cool that you sat in with us the whole time. Hopefully we had a topic you thought was interesting.
It was very interesting. I love that's actually one of my favorite topics. That's something I look into on my own quite a bit.
Cool. Yeah, it's something that needs to be talked about. And what did we take away from all that? Well, in my opinion, it's that, hey, guess what? They knew what they were doing in the 60s to us, and almost all of us have a box somewhere in our house, maybe more, that's kind of sort of zapping us, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they were doing it before the 60s, because I remember reading about Dr. Jose Delgado, that guy who mind controlled a bull in the 50s with electromagnetic waves. First he did it wired, and then he actually learned to do it remotely. So that was even before the 60s.
Yeah, and that all ties over to MK Ultra stuff too.
Yeah, well, these things all tie together.
Delgado, yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if they figured out wireless mind control, at least to some degree, and tying it in with flicker rate, like everything. All this stuff ties in. It's not that one thing is one and then another and then another. No. Like these people have been putting
network.
Yeah, they've been putting stupid amounts of money into all of these programs for decades and coming up with a massive control grid. And that's just what it is. That's not conspiracy theory. You just look at declassified documents. This isn't crazy conspiracy crap. This is admitted. They can do these things. But anyway, I can ramble on and on and on. Let's say goodnight, everybody. Thanks, everybody, being here. Have a great night, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
to see. Line of light, I might believe in heaven. I sign the times and ask you to stay. That's the living story. Take my hand and let's fly manifest inside me, my angel. The universe will speak, manifest inside me, my angel, for all to see. Manifest inside me, my angel. The universe will speak, manifest inside me, my angel, for all to see, manifest inside me, my angel. The universe will speak, manifest inside me, my angel, for all to see.